Welcome to Curito Connects. I'm your host, Jenn, and I've been conversing with friends around the world about life challenges and impactful moments. Conversations on this platform look at answering the questions how we overcome challenges and how our experiences shape who we are and the work we do today. I hope this work can inspire you on your own personal and individual journey. Let's dive right in. Hello, my guest today is Russian-born Daria Kozhukar, founder of Little Heroes, a visual learning aid product geared for teachers and parents working with autistic kids, as well as a global speech special needs platform. Daria is currently based out of Bali with her 11-year-old son, Max, teaching yoga and working on expanding her Little Heroes business. I'm so excited to have her here today. Hi, Daria.
Hi, Jen. So happy to talk to you today, and thank you for having me.
Yay! So you might have guessed based on the title of this episode, but also from the company Daria runs, that learning when her son had severe autism at the age of 3 completely flipped Daria's life around 180. And having had lived an intense corporate career life in China at the time to having to relearn what parenting meant to her and the kind of mother she wanted to be for her son, Daria is here to share with us her journey. So I will pass the mic to you, Daria.
Thank you, Jen. That's such an accurate description of my of my little intro. Yeah, so that was quite an experience when I was living back in China. First of all, China life is so different, and I was learning so many new things there, and it was an exciting path for me. And so when my son was born. He was not diagnosed straight away, right? So there were a few years that I was working on and off part time because of his age. But then once he got diagnosed, we realized that we couldn't even put him anywhere in the kindergarten because this is how it worked in China. They if once you have diagnosis, they tell you that, oh, we don't have like proper support for your child in our education system, therefore we can't accept him. So this is what happened, why I had to compromise my working life and stay back home, because he just wouldn't be accepted in any kindergarten at all. So there I was stuck with a child with no support, because China does not have specialists. Well, right now maybe it's better, but back then it's like 8 years ago, right? There was no support professionally. There was no medical support, and then it was just me and my son, you know. What I had to do is actually I had to learn the ways to interact with him. I had to learn the ways to teach him the proper skills, you know, and just like things that come naturally to kids. I had to teach him actually from like going back to like the basics and starting over. So that was a challenging time because I got trained by different specialists how to work with my son at home, and every few months I would travel back to India. This is where my partner is from, and I would get trained there by specialists and go back to China. And then again, work with him to a certain level to meet our goals, and then again, go back and get reassessed. So that was my life, basically. This is how it happened. And so, whilst I was stuck with him at home, I kind of realized there was so many things that parents actually need in terms of like simplest of things like products, you know, to just buy and start working with children at home. Like, for example, the visual aids. This is how the whole idea came to be. It started as a fun project, to be honest, because I just noticed that everything that I had to explain to my son, I had to present in pictures or drawings, and then visually he would absorb information and comprehend it, and the anxiety level would drop, and then he would be able to actually understand what's happening, where the spoken language sometimes overwhelms them. So so yeah, like I was like, why there is no product? You know, back then it was like there was few like things that you could download from internet, but they were like ugly pictures, like with just like basic, you know, like stick figures, you know. So because I was in China, I was like, maybe I should try and make something just for myself, you know. And then once I started working on that and putting things together, I realized it can be like the whole big project that I can work on. I found an amazing designer to make graphics for me. I found a factory. I made, I think, 5 samples. to perfect our product to the point where it has to be workable with kids, because it has to be light, it has to be, thick enough for them to grab it, because they have not very well developed motor skills and things like that, like small details. So, and then suddenly, like, I found myself opening a company in Hong Kong because I thought, why not to make it a brand. So that's how, like, my business started. And because I understood so much of how it works with our kids, I was able to put so much detail in developing the product, right? So that's what happened with that. And along the way, also, I had to move to Hong Kong at a certain point, because when my son turned 6, I realized he does need to be in some kind of education system, because otherwise it's going to be very difficult for him to learn the social skills, interaction, like the whole, like, routine of being at school, right? So this is where I moved to Hong Kong, and started working full time there, also because I didn't have choice. Hong Kong life is expensive. And I was on the side, I was running my company still as a fun project, to be honest, until I met my very close friend, and she's a partner now in business. And then she told me, let's make it happen, um, and this is where we started slowly growing our business. And yeah, so that's the visual cards, or visual support system, uh, story comes from. But there is also other part of it. All this time that I was struggling with my son, looking for right support, looking for information online, a specialist, I realized there is lack of information just being compiled in one place, and I'm like, this is such a difficult lifestyle anyways for parents with kids with special needs. And forget about, like, just autism, let's talk about, like, physical disabilities. There is no information on the internet about the places with, like, wheelchair access, for example, and things like that are just basic for our survival and for our proper lifestyle, right? The inclusion itself in the society. So I was just thinking about that, like, how there is nothing that exists that can help parents just find all information in one place, whether it's education, whether it's medical support, whether it's public venues and restaurants with, like, access for special needs, and um, all this all these different kind of places. So then this idea was sitting with me for a few years, because I was also relocating from place to place, right? So I moved from China to Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, I started from zero again, like, building up my support system, understanding where I can find specialists, understanding where to go, who is right. And by the time you find the right person that you need, you spend a lot of time, you spend a lot of money, you spend a lot of energy, you get frustrated. It's like, it's a mission impossible, and yeah, it's very difficult, basically. So, and then I moved to Bali, and again, here I am, starting this from zero. So finally this year, I met also a very good friend here who is a tech guy, and he's like, listen, like, let's just build it. I told him, like, I want to build a platform that will have all the information based on your location, like, in one place, but I want it to be global. He's like, let's do it. Like, I know how to do it. Let's build it. So this year we also launched a new project that I'm super excited about, because it will make life easier for so many people. But forget even about parents or caretakers, right? It's like, yes, we need all that information, but what about service providers? For example, if you, Jen, today, like, decide to become a speech therapist and you want to offer your services because you're new in the market, for you to actually let people know what you do, you have to go through this crazy social media algorithm that are impossible to break, impossible to reach your clientele, although you might be the most amazing specialist in your area, so here you don't need to do that, because everyone is in the same platform, and parents can actually leave reviews to the listings. Like, if you list your services and I'm your client, I'm like, oh, you know what, by the way, Jen is so great, these are her special skills. And for parents, it makes it so much easier to find what exactly they need, and it's all in one place for you to find your clients and for them to find you, so it's like, It works both ways. So I'm super excited about it, and we are building it slowly. I'm excited to see new listings being added from different parts of the world. It really like make my heart melt. You know, the first day that I saw it going live, I was like, oh my God, this is actually happening. Yeah.
It's like you're like crying because it's been years in the making, and it's like finally happening. Thank you for that quick summary about Little Heroes and where you are now. I think this topic, and I think why we connected also, because I think it's so empowering what you've done with Little Heroes, your journey with Max, and you're quite vocal on social media as well with working with Max on his growth and his learning. Um, and I think clearly this has been very, very impactful for you personally as well, because it's almost like life threw you a left field curveball that you had no idea 10 years later, when you had Max, and 10 years later where you're now, this is what you'd be spending your day in, day out doing and becoming an expert in this area. So I just wanted to ask you, in terms of who Daria is, like if I had met you 15 years ago when you were living your corporate life in China, and the version of you now is very different, perhaps. Did you feel like there was shift in friend groups? You had mentioned earlier about finding support network, and you mentioned you were in China, so and even there, education wasn't very available for kids like Max. So that must have been very difficult. Plus the language barrier; it was all in Chinese. What helped you get through all this? So I guess my question here is two parts, right? Who you were then and who you are now, and then the second part is, like you mentioned earlier, what support networks did you seek out to help your process, but also for you personally, to handle what you were faced with?
Right. So yeah, who I was and who I am. Well, I would say I'm the same person, like with ambitions, with desire to somehow express myself with what I'm doing. But yeah, like the field of expertise and what I'm actually doing with my life is completely different. And I have to tell you that it's been quite a journey for me to reach here, because there were a few years in between where I was just like a mom of a special needs child who was figuring it out, like how can I make anything out of my life. And then the project that I started years and years ago, like with the cards, it was like, okay, it's going, but I don't know if that's what is my determination, or if there anything else I can do. And I think also along the way, because I've been into my practice of yoga since 2006. Like I started practicing yoga, and I was getting deeper into that, and it helped me to stay grounded and kind of waiting for my chance to see clearly what my purpose is. Because right now, if you ask me, I'm like, how have I not seen it before? Right now I'm so clear, like this is my goal. This is my purpose. I just want to build a better community. I build awareness. I want to make life easier for our kids in the future, or for people that, generally speaking, with different kind of disabilities. Because if you take deaf people, they're also struggling with fitting into this daily life, or like blindness. So there is no accommodation for any of that. And due to, like, I did some research, and it shows like there is more than 40% of population in our planet now have certain kind of disability. So imagine that, it's like it's almost half, and they are not having the same quality of life. That's not fair, right? So I'm very vocal about it, about on my social media. That's why I'm actually speaking about things openly, sharing experiences with my son, telling about our problems, telling about our progress, because I think the world needs to see that they live life, they have their own aspirations, they want to fit in, they want to participate, they're just different, and they need different accommodations for that, right? So that's my purpose, and I would never imagine myself doing it like years and years back. I would, to be honest, like I always wanted to do something like that is social cause, or like saving the planet, or like I always had these ideas, like doing something um, like that, but I would never imagine myself being in this place right now, and I feel quite strong about what I'm doing. And yeah, like I'm really happy in doing that. And so regarding the second part of your question about the support system, it was very difficult in China, also because of course we had friends, but it was kind of, we were quite young still. Like, just imagine, when my son was diagnosed, I was just 30 years old, right? I was just myself, a kind of a kid, not really, but like not mature enough, right? And so all our friend network is the same age, and many of them didn't even have kids, so it was very difficult for me to fit in into my old, friend group with the new situation that I had on my hands. So I have to tell you that China years were like really, really difficult. And once I moved to Hong Kong, I think also for 1 year I was really suffering, because like I didn't really have anyone to even call for coffee, Like for 1 year I was just like in solitude, just taking care of my son. Then I found a job, then I started meeting more people, and this is how I started building my friend network, who were also in different space in their life, like no kids, not married, but they happen to be so supportive, and they become just my family, like still until now. They are just my strongest support, so they were always there for me. And of course my family, I did not expect them to be so understanding and so compassionate, because back in Russia, we also have a little bit of backwards mentality towards special needs, or let's say lack of knowledge and understanding of and education in that regard. So I was expecting a little bit, kind of difficulty there, but my parents just stepped up, and they came so many times to stay with us for a few months, to really help me out, to give me a little bit of a break, because it's intense, and my partner's family as well, because he actually has a sister with disability as well. So his mom knows it all, and she was always there for me, with her compassion, with her support, with her, until today. She's just like, if anything is happening, I can spend hours with her on phone, to just going through what we are dealing with, right? So yeah, those were my pillars, holding me up.
Yes, support network is very important. And I'm sure you found yours in Bali now too, that you've moved out there to a new environment.
Yeah, Bali is good, but actually it's such a different place, but what is amazing here is like there is a lot of people who are spiritually connected and evolved in some ways, you would say, and they look at these matters in different light. And there is a lot of like community support as well from people who barely know you. They can sometimes just be the most amazing support ever, just offering their hand and offering their um, shoulder, sometimes, just to to be there for you. Yeah, but also like I have I've connected with a couple of mothers who have special needs kids here as well, and we are there for each other as well, so that's a beautiful thing.
That's great. So I do have to ask, for little heroes, do the little heroes have big heroes? And I also wanted to ask you more in terms of educating listeners about special needs and autism, for those who are not so familiar, because it's like what you said, if I wasn't introduced to you by Tamara, who you mentioned earlier, I wouldn't have known that, wow, these cards could be really useful in interacting with autistic kids,
Right.
because I'm not so familiar with interactions with kids with autism or other special needs. So, and I think that's really important. Like you mentioned, I mean, if 40% of the world have special needs issues or cases, to be more compassionate towards them, right? But you won't know until they might say something or it's acknowledged, because you might just run into people and you think they're quite normal, or they're behaving in a certain way, but you're not sure if that's because they're acting out, or or what it might be.
Right. Yeah. So, in that regard, big heroes, let's say, there is a network of a lot of people actually speaking up now who's been diagnosed with autism or who's been through a difficulty of like going through this process without having much support back in the years as kids and teenagers, and now they're young adults. They are very vocal on social media, which is amazing to see. And to be honest, like I'm learning a lot from them because okay, as the mom of my son, I know him best, but from their perspective of how they actually process things and how they relate to things and how they think, it's so helpful because we can assume so many things, but we can never know for sure, right? So that's very educative for me, and we haven't been collaborating on anything yet, but I am trying to get there because it's really exciting, to have someone speak up and bring this awareness to people that yes, we have people who are different in our community, even though they might be fully functioning like us and working and having social life, but they somehow feel excluded because they have difficulty to cope with life, right? Or cope with interactions. And therefore, it shows, right? They don't have confidence to actually be a part of the community. And that is a big issue as well because they know it's almost like you subconsciously you're not going to be accepted because you're different already. So I think it's very important to hear them out and to let them speak and to let them uh, tell others their stories and how they cope with this. But for now, what I'm doing also to support parents, especially who have like newly diagnosed children, I'm inviting different specialists in different areas. So I've already had one interview, which is on my Instagram, um, with a lady from Canada. She's an amazing parental coach, and she also has developed her system of visual support for kids. So we're kind of in the same area, but very vastly different at the same time as well. But we were talking about like self-regulation, which is a very important topic as well. So I feel like I want to invite these different specialists to talk about matters that are really important and to support parents who, because sometimes you feel like you're so excluded and you're there by yourself, but once you hear others talking and giving you examples and specialists giving you like a basic, very easy to use at home like advices and approaches, then you kind of, oh, you know what, actually, like, let me try that. And you get like, you give the hope to parents, right? And then you also get them to connect like to experiences that other people have like similarly in the same area, for them to not feel like they're completely alone and left out, especially now in this pandemic, when we don't have much freedom to connect physically with people, like personally, right? So yeah, so that's what like I'm excited about this part as well because I want to bring in speech therapists, occupational therapists, even like relationship coaches um, to tell parents how to build the connection between themselves as well, because I've been through that too, that way you focus on your child completely, there is other part of your family that is not catered to, right? And that
Yeah.
relationship also need to be nurtured, and that relationship also need to be cared for. So how can we balance it out? How can we find an energy, and space um, uh, for that as well? So like I want to bring these different people because different aspects of our life actually play a huge role, because if you're not happy yourself as a person, you can't really give much to your child. So it's happy, it's important to stay happy, healthy, and grounded, which is very difficult in our situation, right? So that's what I'm doing with that as well. And yeah, definitely at some point I will start bringing in more people with different diagnoses to speak about different things in their life, which will help others to relate and connect.
I like how you brought up the parental coaching as well, because I think that is actually very important, not only with families with kids with special needs, but just in general in a household, especially like you said, with the current pandemic. I think a lot of parents who are living with their kids, in this lockdown, unlockdown situation for the last almost year and a half now, probably do need some sort of guidance in terms of how to, everyone's giving their attention to the kids and making sure you have time for yourself, but also for your partner, having those healthy conversations. It's not so much that it's the special needs situation, but it's also like the whole mental health that everyone is talking about now, right? So you add on mental health onto special need cases, and it's double difficult.
Yeah, exactly. No, 100%. It's like we all need to kind of rewire ourselves in this situation, right? It's extreme situation, to be honest. And what I think a lot of people struggle with, like a lot of parents struggle with, is like you have this online schooling, you have these things that you academically need to do with your children, and then you have to do your work maybe, and then you have other things to take care of, and then in the end of the day you don't have time to really connect to your child. And I think, like, more than anything, more than anything, that's what I'm advocating for all the time, that like 10 to 15 minutes of a proper interaction with your child, like connected emotional interaction, gives much more than few hours of trying to do the academical stuff and like getting them to do things, like it might seem to us it's like a quality parenting to make sure that they are on target, but actually our kids need so much nurture and so much this love and support from us at this time too, because it's not normal for them, like you imagine, like you yourself, if I don't know if you remember yourself when you were a kid, but I spent all the time out with kids learning things about life from interacting, playing, and doing stuff, not by sitting at home in front of the computer, obviously, right? So when that part is taken away, like they only have to rely on us to connect and to be, to feel like they belong into the society, not to the network of the computers and gadgets, right? So yeah, that's really important. And I think if I am to give advice to anyone, it's just like do simple things, like just play a game, just spend some time outdoors, just walking and talking about things without any gadgets, TVs, and things like that. Just like normal human interaction and connection, that is so much more powerful than anything else.
Yeah, that's actually reminder for also adults that we need we need the basic human interaction. But it's really true because um, I don't have kids, but I do see others with their kids out, and during this pandemic, you do see that they get a little bit more shy because they've just been at home with their adults or their siblings, and they can interact, but it's just like adults too. How do we apply our social skills when we're out meeting, when we're out socializing, and these are little people, and watching how the little people, they're a little bit shy because they can vocalize what they want, they want to ask questions, but they're also not sure how the other person's going to respond to them.
Hmm.
Right. So it's it's important that there is that element as well. So I think that's a really helpful tip. But how would you suggest parents go about that during the pandemic right now? If everything is online, how do you create a little bubble for yourself with other families who are willing to interact with each other so the kids can get together?
But yeah, it's that part. It's either you create a bubble in at home, or you like try to bring in friends and do some kind of you would say play dates, but they can be so much more. Like you can make things together, you can cook things together, you can just you connect doing things together, like which are normal. First of all, you're teaching them skills at the same time, right? For example, if you decided, oh, let's like learn how to make pasta, the simplest of things, right? But it's fun for kids, because they know how to do it. You give them the understanding that, oh, like I'm in charge of my own life, I can actually make my own meal now. And at the same time, you're connecting, you're explaining to them things, you're doing it in a playful manner, you're allowing them to participate in the process. This is how you build a connection, this is how you kind of come together closer, doing things together as a family, rather than like I said, like maybe even like sometimes reading a book gets like so you know um already boring for them, because they keep doing this like for studies, for this, for that, but doing just simple things like, cleaning stuff together. Okay, let's just like rearrange your room today, let's see how you like it today, like, do you want to shift things around? Yeah, just things like that that actually enhance like excitement a little bit, but also meaningful in that sense, right? And give
Yeah.
them power to decide also what they want to do and how they want to do it. So there's so many tips that I could think of, but yeah, like it's just the basic small ideas that I'm just throwing in here, right?
Yeah, that's really helpful. Okay, well, is there also any, so I mean, you covered the tips part, but is there any books or resources? Obviously, I will link everyone to your website, so they can also follow the global platform for resources, like you mentioned, and also Little Heroes cards, and also your social media, because you're very vocal about your day to day with Max, but also any additional resources. What would you recommend for books or other resources that was helpful for you during this last decade?
To be honest, like I read a lot of books which did make sense to me back then, but I have to say that there is so much more research happening these days and there is so much more information. And what I found very helpful for myself actually is learning from other people like me who have similar experiences, because it does give you a little bit more insight. And first of all, and secondly, like, yeah, finding people like same, like I would give the biggest example, Temple Grandin, right? She is an autistic adult who has PhD, who is very verbal about special needs. She talks about it all the time. She has her own trainings now. So people who really inspire you to move in a direction where the world is moving right now, because like there are new books getting released every time. So I think parents can actually just research that, whatever, who is interested in what. But I think finding that network of specialists online, leading specialists, there is like an amazing specialist from occupational therapist from Canada that I had a chance to meet in person in Hong Kong. When I was there, she was giving a seminar to parents on importance of interaction and physical activity for kids with special needs, and she is just legendary. So I can include her name there. I follow her, obviously psychologists who talk about relationships, who talk about traumas, who talk about, that's very important part to understand for us as parents, because if we don't understand how our childhood molded us into this grown-up person, right, we can't be a better support for our kids at the same time. So there's so many things that you actually have to think about, but I would say start small. Just find people you can relate to who speak your same language with you, and that I mean, by that I mean not just English to English or Russian to Russian, but the fact that a lot of specialists speak a lot of like loud terms that you actually have no clue what it means, like find people who you can actually relate to, speak on your level, your language, and then it makes it easy for you, like, oh, it's actually quite simple, it's not that as difficult, because sometimes in the books you write it so complicated, right? so so you're like, oh my god, I'm never gonna figure it out. Yeah, but like on right, we are so lucky to have Instagram these days, because like everyone is there and there is so much useful information there. Like I really love that as a source of my support, because I do find a lot of like small insights here and there, and to improve myself as a parent, to improve myself as a person, to learn new skills or how I can help, to learn new perspective on disabilities. Yeah, all of that stuff is,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you for letting us be a part of that journey with you. I think we'll wrap up here by, I guess, talking about the future. So, Max's future as they grow up into grown-ups, and how do they handle, the world, the real world. I mean, they still are in the real world, but just as independent individuals, maybe not living with you anymore and handling things on their own. I know it's a little bit far off, but it's not that far off actually. It's only
Not, yeah.
less than a decade away. And maybe these are things you've kind of also thought about in the back of your mind for Max, but also what you've seen in your research and what you've studied in terms of others who eventually are able to be independent with their special needs.
Yeah, that's very important one, actually, because so in countries like where I'm now, Indonesia, let's say, or even China for that matter, and maybe even Hong Kong partially, I don't think there is enough support for people beyond education. Like once you're done with school per se, whatever level you are at, like you're done. Like there's but there is so much more accommodation like in the Western world for this, like they actually have communities and organizations allowing this people, young people with disabilities, to have jobs depending on their level and depending on their abilities, right? Because some of them are very genius actually in many very many things. They just, if they can't communicate well, it doesn't mean that they can't do anything. They actually can be so good at even programming or things like, that don't require you to speak but require you understand things in depth. So there are communities, there are organizations that are taking care of like young adults in the Western world, but I think we are still to build that in our eastern part of the world, and that's why I feel like, yes, I've thought about it a lot. Like, what am I going to do? Like, Bali is amazing right now. He has support that he needs. I was able to find everything that I need for him right now. But like, what do we do from here? Because he's now, like, let's say almost 12, right? Few more years and he's becoming a young adult. Like after 15, 16, this is it, he needs to learn independence. And that's like actually a very difficult question, because I'm like, sometimes I get very anxious thinking about it, but then I'm like, okay, calm down, there's always a solution. You can always find a place where you can go. And this is how, like, I also discovered that my platform that I'm building is very helpful in that, because I find so much information about like places, different places in the world, how they come. There are actually communities that are built. For example, like you can stay there for a few days in the same community with people with the same abilities or like somewhat similar disabilities, and there is a support, there is a medical support there, there's a professional support, there are psychologists there living like we would say on campus, but they just have their own life, they have their own interactions, they just have a community. So that's like such a beautiful thing. I never knew it existed, but now with so much research, like I get to know all these things, and then I think, okay, so my future is not in Bali probably, unless I decide to build that community here myself, which I don't see myself right now doing that. But, but yeah, like probably we will move somewhere else where I find a better life for my son. Like he is my guide. He's my inspiration. I just follow him.
Great. Well, we'll continue to follow your journey.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, that's all we have time for today. But again, I will link all of Daria's social media and Little Heroes so everyone can follow for those who are interested. And anyone who has questions can reach out to Daria directly.
Yeah, yeah, directly on Instagram. Please go ahead
Yeah.
and just text me.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jen. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
That's all we have time for today. Thank you for listening to Curito Connects. For more Connects content, collaborations, and discoveries set to inspire you on your own individual journey, please head to our website at www.curito.co. Until next time, stay inspired, and thank you for joining us at Curito Connects.